In 1977, author Toni Morrison published a book called Song of Solomon, which was based around Macon III, also known as Milkman, and his journey from childhood to adulthood between the 1930s through the 1960s.
When I began to write something like Song of Solomon, and I was trying to pull from the kind of culture that existed already in a northern town that had a large black community in it, so that the history was in their songs.
But before I go into detail about the book, let's take a look at how life was for people of color during the 1930s through the 1960s. During this time, people of color were experiencing extreme discrimination and segregation. The Jim Crow laws were still active and threatening the lives of countless African Americans. They lived in constant fear of being murdered, mocked, and lynched for the color of their skin. Many African American men and women were struggling to live up to the American dream in a society that told them repeatedly that they were not good enough. Women felt forced to live up to the ideal beauty standards of that time that revolved around a sickening infatuation with only white features. In Song of Solomon, we see this through the character Hagar. In Chapter 2, when Milkman first meets Hagar, Morrison states, "Hagar looked around, all eyes and hair." Many people were attracted to Hagar because of her natural beauty. Unlike some other women in the novel, she never struggled in receiving attention from men.
A beauty salon is more than a feminine barber shop. It is a place where they may be transformed from commonplace to outstanding, where natural beauty is developed and accentuated. Many women average 2 hours a week in a beauty salon. The care given their crowning glory depends on how much time they can give it and the skill of the beauty operator. The way to beauty may not be the most attractive, but the admiring glances that result are worth it.
In Chapter 3, when Milkman was walking with guitar past a beauty shop, Milkman noticed that beauty shops always had curtains or shades up. Barbershops didn't. The woman didn't want anybody on the street to be able to see them getting their hair done. They were ashamed. The example of shades being drawn in beauty shops versus barbershops tell a blatant and vivid tale of how women were to just appear beautiful. Black women were ashamed to be seen getting their hair done like white women because it showed society that, to an extent, colored women did not feel comfortable as themselves and wished to look like the white women. They felt the need to change themselves in order to comply to society's beauty standards and to be loved by a man. For example, when Milkman left Hagar to go on his journey, Hagar became self-conscious. "No wonder," said Hagar, "no wonder. Look at how I look. I look awful. No wonder he didn't want me. I look terrible." She became obsessed about her appearance and living up to the ideal beauty standard. She was so upset about losing Milkman, she forgot to take care of and love herself. She eventually got very sick and passed away due to her illness and a broken heart. White beauty standards played a huge role in Hagar's life and eventually brought her to her own demise, just as it is for many women of color today. Even after almost 80 years, women of color still have the same struggle that Hagar had endured.
It's something that I don't usually talk about because I'm afraid that I'm making people uncomfortable. It's something that affects me in almost every aspect of life.
There's something about having dark skin on a woman's body that shapes the way she moves through the world. There's something about having darker skin on a male body that shapes the way in which he moves through the world. It has real life stakes.
From what I've seen growing up, dark skin equates to being poor, dirty,
Ratchet.
They tend to be the bad guys in Tyler Perry movies.
Straight from the border.
That doesn't even make any sense. I'm not deemed as beautiful, therefore I am not beautiful. And those two are not really mutually exclusive.
Could it be that something as early as colonization or slavery is primarily responsible for our beauty standards today. We're talking about who works in the field and who works in the house. We're also talking about rape, the rape of slaves to produce people who are known as mulattoes or mixed race. These standards of beauty travel. Eurocentric standards of beauty travel.
In the Dominican society and our culture, they have a phrase that's like mejorando la raza, advancing the Dominican population and making sure we're going into how they say the better. If you're lighter, you're bettering the race and you're bettering the island versus if you're just being you.
When we turn off the lights, they say, "Oh, Salorm, where did you go?" Or, "Oh, you're really pretty for a dark-skinned girl." Are you saying that my race and just the fact that I am black, is that not attractive in general?
Social media, television, and tabloids tell women how they are to look rather than focusing on appreciating what traits make them beautiful. Especially in this day of age, we have so much exterior media to amplify the standards of society. Women today are pressured even more so than in the 30s to live up to what society deems as perfect. Today's society is completely different than what it used to be, and how the media portrays men and women are now the normal beauty standards of the 21st century. Technology has affected appearances greatly due to the use of Photoshop and editing software that distorts models into looking perfect. With the creation of social media came a lot of pressure to be perfect. With the help of Photoshop and various editorial apps, companies are sending out false images to women around the world, convincing them they have to look a certain way in order to appear beautiful. It can be especially hard for women of color considering a lot of the ideal beauty standards are based on white features, such as light skin, tall, thin, straight hair, etc. For example, according to everydayfeminism.com, celebrities and models featured in fashion magazines and beauty ads are mostly white women of a specific age and body type. Women of color selected to represent beauty tend to be lighter skinned, thin-figured, plus the media representations of women of color are often whitewashed. But on the contrary, many women around the world have started to accept who they are and what makes them unique. Today's society is overwhelmingly different than in the 1930s or the 1960s, and women of color have started embracing their natural beauty. In an interview with Time magazine in 2008, Toni Morrison was asked if she believed black women are still dealing with the same self-acceptance issues as in the past.
Not at all. They seem to me to be excessively confident in themselves.
Really?
Oh God, yeah. With none, they don't even know what I'm talking about. When I wrote the book, the young women who read it liked it and were protective of it. But nowadays, listen, that was 70s, that's 30 years ago, yes? I find young African American women much more complete. They seem to have a confidence, almost a feeling of superiority in some ways.
Beauty standards have been a difficult, almost impossible ideal for women of color to live up to, especially in a society that only chooses those who are tall, thin, and white to be deemed as perfect. Our standards for beautiful women in the 30s and 60s versus now has not seemed to have changed much in all of 80 years. Now the standards of society are just more vivid and amplified through multiple media sources such as magazines, social media, and even clothing companies. In reality, all women should be praised for their beauty, although our shallow society says otherwise. These problems will not go away until everyone learns to respect, accept, and love each other, and especially cherish what makes them who they are.